interpreted in many ways and on many levels. We won't therefore interpret the veil as a singular phenomenon, but we will discuss it's in generic terms, covering the many different veils that are referred to in the Ageless Wisdom teachings and are encountered at various stages on the spiritual path. We'll also discuss them in terms of forces of illusion, glamour, and Maya, which are obscuring the light of reality from humanity, and how the work of a discipleship group can help to progressively destroy them. And in the words of the great invocation, let light, love, and power restore the plan on earth. So hopefully our work with the keynote this weekend will also deepen our understanding of what it means to live and serve in the aura of a school group, and how we can intensify its energy so that it serves ever more efficiently as a beacon of light in human consciousness. Our aim is to strengthen the bridge of communication between the inner and the outer realms. And in the words of the mantra of unification, let pain bring due reward of light and love. Let the soul control the outer form and life and all events, and bring to light the love that underlies the happenings of the time. So in the spirit of this mantra, as part of our work to act as a bridge between the spiritual hierarchy and humanity, and evoke the conditioning energies of the new era, we're now going to work with a New Age symbol that was given to Foster Bailey. And it's a symbol that provides a succinct but potent representation of some of the energies that are available at this time to help usher in the New Age. So holding a point of spiritual tension at the center of the symbol, the equal arm cross, our talk is to sensitize ourselves to the energies flowing from the Christ and the divine lives that stand behind him. So it's a powerful means of occult service, of assisting in the inauguration of an era of peace, enlightenment, and goodwill. While the world's problems seem overwhelming, we know that there've long been prophecies and forecasts of the disruption that would precede the approach of the Christ and the hierarchy. Old patterns of thinking are being rapidly broken down, but there are also those spiritual patterns of thinking that develop, which are the achievement of the passing Piscean age, and which are to be kept and fused with the new potencies of the Aquarian age. So Foster noted that it's the perfecting of this blend, which is the supreme task of Christ at this time. A blend which must be achieved, which is suitable to the condition of humanity as it is now. So let's proceed with our reflection on this symbol. Have you all got a copy of the visualization? I will read it out anyway, so not to worry. So it's called a symbol of synthesis. In these three words, light, love, and power, the energies of the Christ's three associates, the great triangle of force which stands in power behind him, are described as the energy of the Buddha, light, for light ever comes from the east. The energy of the spirit of peace, love, establishing right human relations. The energy of the avatar of synthesis, power, implementing both light and love. And at the center of this triangle, the Christ took his stand, and from that point, his Aquarian work began, and it will continue for 2,500 years. So as part of the group mind, focus the consciousness at the center of the New Age symbol, the equal armed cross of discipleship. Carry the focus inwards to the blue five-pointed star of the Christ, imbued with the energy of love wisdom. Move deeper inwards to the triangle of yellow and reflect on the energy of the three great lives that stand behind the Christ, empowering his work. The avatar synthesis at the peak, the Buddha on the right-hand side of Christ, and the Spirit of Peace on the left-hand side of Christ. Visualize the synthesizing energy of the golden disk of light standing behind these great lives and representing the heart of the spiritual sun, precipitating through the triangle, the star, and the group mind at the center of the cross, and into the consciousness of the new group of world servants. In a state of silent spiritual tension, imagine the seed of synthesis expanding to embrace the world and binding together that which has been separated. Sound together the affirmation of the new group of world servers. May the power of the one life pour through the group of all true servers. May the love of the one soul characterize the lives of all who seek to aid the great ones. May I fulfill my part in the one work through self-forgetfulness, harmlessness, and right speech. So let's proceed with the program for the weekend. And we're going to start this afternoon's work with a session on the keynote and the nature of fire. Curtis is with the fires of group life, essentially. We have two students, Curtis Hoffman, who's going to speak on the fire in occult doctrine, the psychological key. An easy one for you, that, Curtis. Yeah. And God is love, and God is a consuming fire, the burning ground, with Daniel Luminor. So we'll start with Curtis. Thank you.
Can we have the first slide, please? Yes, thank you. I'd like to begin this talk with a challenging quote from the 20th century Cretan mystic Nikos Kazantzakis from his book, The Saviors of God, Spiritual Exercises. Fire will surely one day come to purify the earth. Fire will surely come one day to obliterate the earth. This is the second coming. One day the entire universe will become a single conflagration. Fire is the first and final mask of my God. In order to explore this theme of fire, I'm going to take you on a journey through the macrocosm and the microcosm, similar to the way the Tibetan deals with the subject in the treatise on cosmic fire, but brought up to date with more recent scientific discoveries. The main principle to keep in mind is the law of analogy. The things which are above are as the things which are below for the working of the miracles of the One. This law of analogy is fundamental to all esoteric teachings, and even though the correspondences may not be exact, there are general similarities at every scale. The analogy I will ask you to consider is one in which a spherical outer form contains within its core a zone of potent energy creation and destruction, or what esotericists refer to as life, and each of these spheres is often in a group formation, most frequently in groups of 7. We may think of the outer form as the veil, which hides the face of the life principle within. Where science and esotericism currently do not yet see to eye is in the attribution of consciousness to the great macrocosmic beings esotericism posits in our teachings. As meditators, we know that this life more abundant because we experience it in our meditation work. Science insists upon concrete proof, governed as it is by the fifth ray, which concentrates upon the study of the garment of God. However, there is considerable scientific interest nowadays in consciousness as an inherent property of the universe, along with matter and energy. Esotericism also posits that consciousness is the product of the interaction between these two qualities. We begin with our planet Earth, which we understand is the body of a planetary logos, Sanat Kumara. The outer surface of the Earth with which we are familiar conceals numerous layers down to its core. While the core used to be thought of as a solid iron nickel under great heat and pressure, recent scientific discoveries are suggesting that it acts more like an ionized gas or plasma, with carbon atoms whizzing across it at great speeds. Plasmas are a higher state of matter than gases, and they may be the fourth etheric subplane, which the Tibetan predicted would be identified by science by the end of the 20th century. This more fiery description is in line with the first ray quality of energy and will. In our solar system, this ray is attributed to the planet Vulcan. Astronomers have searched for this planet for almost 200 years without success, but the ancient Romans knew just where Vulcan's forge was, beneath their feet. They also regarded the same location as the home of the deity representing the other first-ray planet in our system, Pluto. One possibility to consider is that every planet veils an aspect of Vulcan or Pluto or first-ray energy at its core. Perhaps the recent revelation of this energetic center is to be associated with the evolution of our planetary logos on Earth towards becoming a sacred planet. When we think of fire, we most often think of our sun. Esoteric doctrine states that there are three layers of the sun: the outer layer characterized by fire by friction, a middle layer characterized by solar fire, and an inner core characterized by electric fire. Modern solar science confirms this, and as the sun is entirely made of plasma, we may think of these layers as the second, third, and first subplanes of the etheric. It is in the core that fusion takes place, where hydrogen fuel is transformed into helium, resulting in a huge radiation of heat on the order of 15 million degrees centigrade. Esoteric doctrine associates the outer layer with the third ray, the middle with the second ray of love wisdom, and the core with the first ray of will or power, but also in the role of destroyer. Our sun is only one of only about 400 million stars in our galaxy, the Milky Way. Oops, okay, we're back on. No, we're good. All right. And many of these stars are now known to have families of planets like ours does, and more are being discovered every year. Our solar system is part of a local group. In esoteric literature, these include the Pleiades, Sirius, and the seven stars of the Great Bear. Sirius, associated with the second ray, is indeed a very near neighbor, being only 8.6 light years away. Stars of the Great Bear, associated with the first ray, are about 80 light years away. The Pleiades are much further away at a distance of about 440 light years, and they are associated with the third ray. Typically, they are said to be 7 in number, but actually this is a birthplace of stars with more than 1,000 identified so far. These three groups are still local in the sense that the entire galaxy is estimated to be about 87,000 light years in diameter. The Tibetan suggests that 7 local groups are part of a larger group of 7 groups, which in turn are part of 7 yet larger groups, making a total of 343, or 7 cubed. However, to achieve the number of stars now estimated to make up the Milky Way, one would have to raise 7 to the 10th power. One peculiarity of the Tibetan's writings is that he never explicitly mentions the galaxy. At its center is a supermassive black hole, which has the potential to swallow light. It is now thought that every one of the trillions of galaxies in the universe may contain such a black hole at its core. And we may speculate that not only does this function as a fiery destroyer of form, but also as its creator. If you've read many of the Tibetan's works, you may have observed that he has quite a great deal to say about the entity known as the one about whom naught may be said. Perhaps this is an oblique reference to the nothingness which is to be found at the center of a galaxy. The event horizon of a black hole is literally on the margin between existence and non-existence. It is not that one cannot say anything about this, but rather that its fundamental nature is a naught. Some black holes are apparently the result of fiery explosions of very large stars, but perhaps what is being witnessed here is the initiation of an advanced solar logos into a cosmic logos. Turning our perception now from the very large to the very small, we know that an atom is also a spherical entity with a nucleus at its center, and the transformation of protons into neutrons in that nucleus is capable of releasing a huge amount of atomic energy, fiery, called the weak force, which can be used either for peaceful or warlike purposes, to create or to destroy. But each of the elementary particles in the atom is itself made up of yet smaller particles called quarks, which lie on the border between existence and non-existence. Physicists distinguish 6 flavors of quarks: top, bottom, left, right, charm, and strange. One has to wonder whether, in accordance with the law of analogy, there might be a 7th quark of which they are all composed and which likewise transcends the boundary between existence and non-existence. Atoms join, following the law of attraction, to form molecules which are the building blocks of matter. In the mineral kingdom, they form crystals. In the other three kingdoms, they form cells. Each of these cells likewise has a nucleus which directs the functions of the cell. In addition, there are special bodies called mitochondria, which are responsible for the heat energy of the cell. Our physical bodies are made up of trillions of cells, all generated from a single fertilized ovum and differentiated into their functions. According to the testimony of clairvoyance, our personality trees appear as a sphere, with their 7 energy centers, described by the Tibetan as flaming 4-dimensional spheres. At the center of these is the heart, which, when awakened, flames forth with love for all creatures, and which impels us to express its fire in service to the world. Eventually, as the Kundalini fire is safely raised, these centers will be superseded by the 7 centers in the head. As more advanced members of humanity awaken to soul influence, we are drawn into the periphery of the ashrams of the masters. This transforms the individual aspiration of the heart into group fusion. Each of these ashrams is likewise a sphere with a master at its radiant center. A master is one who has transcended the necessity of a material vehicle and thus symbolically stands on the margin between what we call physical existence and non-existence. As we move closer to the center of the ashram, we too experience the flaming, drenching life that floods the fourth when the fifth is known. Finally, the hierarchy of masters itself is such a sphere with the Christ at its center. We should recall that he advised his disciples not to touch him after his resurrection due to the amount of spiritual fire he embodied, and that they were touched by tongues of fire at Pentecost. The Christ, in turn, expresses the will of the planetary Logos, and this brings us full circle to where we began. In this new age, it is the groups of disciples working in cooperation with the hierarchy whose fiery aspiration will blaze a trail for the reappearance of the Christ. To this goal, let us rededicate ourselves as a group. Thank you.
Daniel, would you? Thank you. So Daniel's going to be speaking to us now on God is love and God is a consuming fire, the burning ground.
Burning ground.
Fiery.
Yeah, already burning. Okay. God is love and God is a consuming fire. At first, these may seem like opposites, one pointing towards unity and harmony, and the other towards intensity, even destruction. But perhaps they are not two different realities, but two aspects of a single process. The fire reveals where we are still limited, where we are still identified. And then the love is the capacity to remain present with what is revealed without immediately reacting or rejecting it. And together, these form what we might call the burning ground experience. In daily life, especially in demanding environment, I notice how quickly reaction arises. The impulse to respond, to correct, to defend can come almost immediately. From an esoteric perspective, this can be understood as a kind of a burning ground, where patterns within us are being exposed. Much of our response is shaped by partial perception. We react from the past, projecting to the future. We compare. He's right, he's wrong, I'm better, I'm worse. And each of these contains a fragment of truth, but rarely the whole. As a well-known simple analogy, we can use an example of several blind people encountering an elephant, each touching only one part. One described the elephant as a pillar when the person touching the legs, and then the other as a wall, and another as a spear when they touch the sharp tusk. And each is not wrong. They actually experience it. But then all of them incomplete. The tension begins when the part is taken as the whole. But that without that tension, there would be no movement towards a fuller understanding, in the sense that conflict itself becomes a part of the burning ground. On the larger scale, we can observe similar patterns in the current world. Certain centers of force amplify this distortion. Patterns such as superiority, which separates, and then the attachment to the past, which anchor perception in memory. Together, they intensify a kind of collective burning ground across our current humanity. And yet, within this distortion, there may be also a hidden quality. What appears as a superiority may contain a distorted sense of value. And then what appears as an attachment to the past may reflect a search for meaning. What becomes important then is a very small but significant moment, which we call the pause. Not reacting immediately, because in that space, something begins to shift. The reaction may still be present, but then it is no longer fully in control. And from that place, it becomes possible to see that my perception is not the whole truth, and neither is anyone else. This doesn't mean that it immediately resolves the situation, but it changes the quality of the participation. There is less need to defend and more space to understand. In this way, the fire reveals limitation, and love allows that limitation to be included and gradually integrated. The two are not separate. They are phases of a single movement. And from this perspective, the question becomes not how to fight the conflict, but then how to respond without reinforcing it. If distortion is separation, the response may be the need for inclusion. And then if the distortion is fixation in the past, the response may be a steadier presence in the present. And now, as we come to a close, it may be helpful to consider what the tension we encounter are not conditioned to avoid, but opportunities to see more clearly. What feels like pressure may be uninviting for a pause. And what appears as a distortion may carry within it a more balanced truth. So perhaps the question is not how to step out of the fire, but instead how to remain in the present and long enough to see what it reveals. Thank you.
Maybe I will just Daniel. It might be best for us to reflect on some of the things you've said, and then we'll go back to other subjects. I think there's just so much in your talk that is just so harmless, really, the way you have brought in the concept of not judging either yourself or others in a group situation. We've spoken a lot about harmlessness already, and I liked the fact that you talked about the compatibility of God being love, and as well as being a consuming fire, and yet they are not necessarily opposites. They feed one another, so to speak, as one single process, and are both needed in that sense, obviously. And the other factor I thought was the burning ground highlights the fact, sorry, no, that's something else I was going to talk about. Yeah, it's just the judgment of ourselves and lesser revelations that we do all the time, really. And you spoke around that so well and brought it together into some kind of way out. It has a potential all the time to change if you let it, or otherwise it becomes a burning ground. But you think also that a burning ground is necessary. The burning, obviously, is the fire of liberation. So it's not all about trying to avoid it. And that's what you're trying to say, is that right? Huh? Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts, Curtis?
Well, I was reminded of a statement in the Bhagavad Gita in which Krishna advises Arjuna, "Seem to slay. By me, all these warriors have been slain already." In other words, the key to right action is detachment. And when one is in that state of detachment, one is feeling compassion for that which opposes us, but at the same time, taking action when action is necessary.
Yeah. I just wanted to introduce you to our online student, Nick Ortiz.
Hello, how are you?
Hi, Nick. It's the first time I've ever pronounced your name right, I believe. Ortiz.
I liked it better before.
So Nick is joining us from Spain, is that right?
It is.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't know if you have any comments so far, or quite how to bring you in. So please just speak up if you want to chip in at any point.
Thank you. Well, I think brilliant talks, both of them fiery at different speed. And it just reflects again and again about this keynote that the conference has. It's a keynote that elevates us to the first principle, to the fire, to destruction, to goddess love. And to grasp this consciousness needs to really go to the higher planes we can as a group. The mind, the conceptual mind is not enough. We need intuition. We need that genius that you spoke about at the full moon meditation. Intuition, the hallmark of genius. So I think that to really achieve a synthesis of what has been said, we need a genius. And I'm probably not the one to do it. But let's, as a group, work together to achieve that synthesis.
Thank you. I just want to go back to what you were saying, Curtis, about making a decision. and I think the Tibetan talks about hovering on the burning ground and not making a conscious decision to go into the fire, to face certain things, to purify ourselves further. And so I think that's important too. They have to, the personality and the soul have to sort of meet at some point if we are to be useful servers. I think you said somewhere also that points of weakness are liable at any time to present points of crisis unless we do this. The points of strength can be transmuted with relative ease into points of spiritual tension. So it's a decision really to let go of the personal life. And at that point of the burning ground, the student is often always a disciple who is an integrated personality, who is really useful server in humanity. So they kind of sometimes think, why should I let go of all of that experience to plunge into something unknown? And it's an act of faith in that sense, I guess, when you're mentally in the right place to be able to do that, Any thoughts?
Yeah. Points of weakness can lead to points of crisis, can lead to points of tension, can lead to points of synthesis.
Excellent. So have you got any further thoughts on your talk that you perhaps could have spoken more about, Daniel?
Perhaps the one more thing that I can add from the presentation is a reminder about the plan.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we are all in the stage of evolution. We are all passing through involution. We are all inheriting the form that developed from the involution part. And then the main purpose of the involution is beautiful, which is to enable us to experience the wholesome. And then now humanity is in between involution product, and then we want to expand our consciousness towards more the evolution part. So that we need to be aware that we inherently carrying that involution form that in the beginning developed from survivability. And then that's why we have that inherent fear of destruction. Meanwhile, as we move forward with the evolution, expanding our consciousness, things have to evolve. So what is no longer needed has to be destructed. And in any response, immediate response to say that this is dangerous, this is not comfortable, that could be our inheritance from the involutionary form that we carry. That's our, what is the word? Automatic response to us. Yeah. And then talking back with what we discussed this morning about the Arcane School, like I'm a new student of Arcane School. I'm just being here for probably like 5 years, 4 years. What I noticed the most is we getting pamphlet, and then we learn the content of the teaching. But then also we're doing like a meditation and also self-reflection, and then reviewing my behavior. When I wrote it, because it's drilled almost every day, I start to notice my involutionary form. And then the understanding about this evolutionary phenomena is becoming more genuinely adopted. And then the understanding about one soul that we share with all of us, the oneness, is genuinely embedded in my heart. And then the harmlessness is really about like if you cut yourself, if your right arm by mistake cutting your left arm and it bleeds and it hurts, you're not punishing your right hand, right? Because it's within you. You genuinely believe that those two arms are one. So that's my understanding about harmlessness derived from that daily exercise. Yeah. And I truly grateful for that method.
Thank you. Want to go now? Yeah.
Yeah. At one point in his writings, the Tibetan talks about the nature of what we call evil. And what he says is that evil is the clinging to that which previously was good. Is a very interesting and profound statement, I think. So when we are faced with that, when we are faced with the responsibility of sealing the door where evil dwells, that's something that we might keep in mind, is that which projects itself along those involutionary lines is that which is in need of being gone beyond, transcended, and in a certain sense, ultimately sealed away or destroyed.
Excellent. Of course, in the school, we have the daily review, the evening review, and that is probably not used as much as it should be by students. I just get this feeling, probably because I didn't use it much. But I think it really is such a good opportunity. And the Tibetan says somewhere, like the end of life, when you do your life review and you pass over, you know, how quick that would be if you did your daily review and put whatever you wanted into the fire, left it to be, leave it alone and walk away, you know. But yeah, it's an excellent practice. It sounds like you might be doing it, Daniel. So I think, Nick, you're very strong on understanding that group work is love and power and that they must go together. I say that because Nick and I have sort of had discussions about this a little bit for this meeting today. And yeah, I mean, obviously, even the power and the first ray in this solar system is love. It's an aspect of love, which we tend to forget about, you know. And one of the quotes I think we discussed was sort of relevant for today. And Tibetan talks about first ray workers, and we need to bring them into the new group of world servers, of course, but there is a sort of danger point with them, and they need to become more loving, sort of more gentle in the process of carrying out their vital work within the new group of world servers. So I just think those ray implications are quite important too, on the burning ground, so to speak.
Yes, in a way, using as a metaphor, today's technology could be related to what was called magic in the past. And we have the wizard there changing our world, doing magical things. And the problem with this is that often the consciousness comes after the events. We learn from experience. The experience happens, and then we reflect on it. So in that sense, we're facing an era where the forerunner, we're told that the forerunner stage is over. The energies have accelerated, they're stronger. We're more capable in so many ways. But the consciousness, especially the individual consciousness, an individual is not just a person, it can be a group, a country, whatever kind of association, has immense power to do things, but probably not the awareness, the wisdom to have discernment, to have clarity, that lucidity, which is growing, but not there yet. So yeah, we see that the world is on fire. We see this is a consuming fire. And sometimes current events might drive us all into despair, into confusion. But we forget that destruction is destruction of the form. And it's the destruction not of the form, but of the limitations of the form, thus releasing it. And with that release, there can come understanding, there can come the intuition. I was jokingly saying more than AI, as often understood in technology, we need esoteric AI, which I call atmic intuition. And as we gain atmic intuition, we will be capable of directing, of understanding the process we're in, and guide, cooperate with the burning fire that at the end of the day is love and life.
Yeah.
I think Daniel made a very good point of that. You know, he's a tough act to follow, but he clearly stated how love is God and love is also a burning fire. But it's a burning fire of love, which tends to bring everything into unity, which is this first ray that you're talking about. Yeah. And this is the first ray, people, workers, servers, that will need to wait, be patient, help, so that they have, as I was saying with technology, the awareness of magic. And the magic is done from the soul. Technology is from the mind. There's a huge difference there. And as we approach them, we'll have better results.
So we've spoken a lot about the symbol of fire. And we're on now to distraction as well, as it being a great liberating force. And as such, it's both creative and destructive fire. So I wonder if we could share some thoughts on this creative destructive dichotomy. What role do these two opposites play in the life of practical discipleship and service? I guess to some extent we've covered it, but there's more to say, perhaps.
In his book, Glamour, A World Problem, the Tibetan gives us a very powerful meditation to be done either by individuals or by a group. It's safer done as a group, on dispelling world glamour. And at the critical point of this meditation, the statement is made: the power of our united light prevents the appearance of the glamour of whatever one we're dealing with. The power of our united light prevents the quality of this from affecting humanity. The power of our united light destroys the life behind this glamour. That's a very provocative statement. But if we think about this in terms of glamour being associated with the astral plane, with emotion, and it has a kind of a life of its own that is energized by what the Tibetan calls kama manas, that is desire mind. There are many points at which that glamour is deluding or illusioning humanity and needs to be dispelled. And in this case, the act of the destroyer is needed in order to dispel the fog of that glamour.
In a sense, it's the mind, isn't it, that destroys glamour.
The old Hindu statement that the mind is the slayer of the real, but the mind is also the slayer of the unreal.
Yeah.
Just a quick addition on that is a reminder for us to think that burning fire is an act to create a space for the love fire to grow. So without the space, there's no room for the growth. Yeah, just remember, keep that in mind.
I can provide a physical analogy to this. There are parts of the world in which forest fire is a necessary action of the kingdoms, because when too much dead wood accumulates, new growth cannot emerge. And it is from the ashes of those fires that fertilize the soil that allow for new growth to emerge. Now, people have sometimes in their thought that they're doing wisdom, have done things to prevent those fires. And as a result of that, the fires that you get, which we are seeing in many parts of the world today, are much more extreme because they have not been allowed to follow their natural course.
It's interesting. It's initiatory, isn't it, as well, for those kingdoms.
Yeah, I'd like to point out that actually we're in a process of initiation. Initiation is liberation. And what this your keynote really brings us closely to this idea of initiation, of being able to see the Father's face. Isn't this what we beg at the Gayatri? Unveil to us the face of the hidden Son. And this is not done alone. This is the group work with all the energies, all the people, with all their partial views, as Daniel was pointing out, that can be united. But this is sometimes not easy. And we're challenged as individuals, as disciples, as groups. And I like to remember what the school letter, this recent school letter, was saying about growing up as the as-if technique, as a means of letting the creative imagination soar on the wings of fiery aspiration. It means par excellence, a precipitation of the future into the light of the present day. I think this is important. And as somebody in a full moon talk recently said, that the goal is simply to attain a greater sense of true self. Time and perseverance will do the rest. This is what we need to unveil the Father face. Work with what we know, and time and perseverance will do the rest.
Yeah. So I think it'd be good now to perhaps ask people in the audience if you would like to share some thoughts on what's been going on. Yeah. Barbara was first. Just waiting for the mic.
One, two. So Daniel, I was very struck by some of your comments, especially the idea of the involution happening and the resistance to it and the fear, which makes me think about the human process of death, which for most people is something to be feared, but it happens to everyone. But for a lot of the people in this room, for practicing esotericists, we know that it's a release into a greater life. And some of us are closer to it than others. So we may think about it a little bit more.
Yeah.
But it reminded me of why possibly so many people don't want to talk about it. It's sort of this forbidden topic, and yet we all go through it.
Mm.
And I was very struck by that, so thank you.
Thanks, Barbara.
Thank you for that. Very rich, the talks, but also the discussion from the four of you. I just wanted to, one of the things that for me listening to that came up was this thing of destruction and the fires of destruction. And sometimes there's a sense that, so what I want to say is just the thought that this is not the destruction is not our responsibility. Our responsibility is, as you said, Curtis, to stand in the light and knowing that the light destroys. And the problem, Chris, that you referred to about first-ray workers is really for the first-ray workers who do not have the alignment with the soul.
Sure.
And so, in a way, for me, the way of thinking about that is to be more open to noticing first-ray servers who are present in the world. They have an outer role,
Yeah.
who clearly are not playing the role of destroyer, but are playing the role of strong, powerful, holding a thought. And such people are present in every field. And I think that's something just to notice and say how important that is. That because we're receiving Shambhala force, like everybody notices those who work with destruction themselves creatively with that, fine, that's okay. But our focus really should be on those who are able to stand with that energy, because in a way we do that in the esoteric field through the beautiful way you spoke of love, that we do that. And then just to be more aware of the magicians that you spoke of, Nick, who are working in some way to find this form in the human mind that holds first-ray energy with power and then lets it work.
I mean, you need those first-ray workers because they drive things, they make things happen. And, they're all needed in different ways, obviously, the rays, but that's a crucial step for us. And as you say, esoteric groups are very much involved with the first ray, and it's the will aspect,
Thank you. Thank you both for your really inspiring talks. Daniel, you were talking about the seeing the part instead of the whole, which is such a natural trend. I will try to partly eliminate one illusion. It is a false way of using the as-if technique. I'm a scientist, and when I was studying physics, I also studied astronomy, not astrology, but astronomy. And at that time, they started talking about black holes. But they did say we assume that there is a black hole. Now, that became a little bit more over time. It became more difficult to say each time we assume there is a black hole. So now we say there is a black hole. And what is a black hole? At the first time, it was some kind of an infinite sink. Everything goes in it. But then when they were looking more correctly and the equipment became stronger, they saw, hey, there's also something coming out of it.
Yep.
So what did they do? Stephen Hawking came with quantum things. And so in quantum things, you can do very funny things. So that could explain that something is getting out of it. But this is just an as-if technique, which is wrong. Because we assume that there are black holes. We now have even black holes that are colliding with each other. They are marrying each other, and they are doing all kinds of things. And here I start to eliminate the glamour. To my mind, black holes don't exist. It's just as if there are black holes because it's so difficult. Let's be clear, we have never seen a black hole.
Wait a minute, we have a
So what do we what do we see? We do see the light that comes out of it. And we will have other discussions about light this weekend. And we are looking at the light and we are interpreting it. So we now, and there I would agree, in each galaxy we say there is a black hole. That's one way of seeing it. There is another, which we have already discussed several times at Arcane School Conferences. We have discussed it at our website with the what is it? The electric bridge. Thank you. So I think it is for us. I'm not talking about the scientists because this is not a scientific forum. But for us to be clear, when we are talking about black holes, there's another way of interpreting them. A black hole, it is in the galaxy, the center of the galaxy, it is a vortex. And it is a vortex of electric currents which do create the same phenomena which we see with the same light that comes to our telescopes. But it's not a black hole. It's an electric phenomenon. Now, why do I think that it is an electric phenomenon? Well, on the one hand, as a scientist, but on the other hand, as an esotericist or an occultist, if you want. Why? If you read Cosmic Fire, you start the first few pages, it tells you if this book is anything at all, at least if it has given the idea that the universe is electric in nature, it will be a success. That's the quintessence of Cosmic Fire. So please, let's try to interpret it, what scientists call black holes, as electric phenomena, which are part and parcel of the structure of our universe. So just my 2 cents.
Could I respond to that? Yeah.
Sure.
I think that we are in a terminological conundrum here. I don't think we're talking about anything different from each other. It's just that we have a different name for it. But I agree that whatever it is that we're calling what's at the center of the galaxy or of galaxies is both destructive and creative. And so it doesn't really matter what we call it, as long as we agree on that.
We agree on that it is destructive and constructive. That's absolutely electricity. The only thing I want to try to do is eliminate the glamour. You know, when you talk about black holes, I understand when you say it's a matter of terminology, but I'm pretty sure that the rest of the audience doesn't. Because all you look at the television, all the scientific programs, which are beautiful, they also talk about black holes. But they talk about gravitational black holes. And I think that is a glamour. So that's just the point to be for us. If you're talking to scientists, that's another story. Okay, thank you.
Agree to disagree.
Or not. I mean, I don't think we do disagree.
No, we don't agree.
Yeah.
So I wanted to comment on Daniel's statement about his point about God's fire being both loving and consuming. And interestingly enough, I have notes that I've been studying, and I brought this. That was part of my study, and it's from Rudolf Steiner. If you don't mind me reading, that I felt was relevant. It's just a very short underline. I'm not reading this whole thing.
I'm sorry, I actually can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay.
Keep the microphone.
You want
Okay.
to read something out?
Yeah, from Rudolf Steiner.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, just
sure.
a little bit in
Yeah.
relevance.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he says here, a moth flies towards the lamp and finds its death in light. This light works upon the moth in such a way that it subjects itself to the search for death. Here we have an example of the action of light upon the living. The caterpillar, we shall consider them somewhat more exactly. The caterpillar cannot rise upon the source of light to the sun in order to cast off itself into it, but it would like to do so. Its desire to do so is just as strong as the moth's, which casts itself into the flame of your bedside lamp and there meets its death. The moth casts itself into the flame and finds its death in physical life. The caterpillar seeks the flame just as eagerly, the flame which comes towards it from the sun, but it cannot throw itself into the sun. The passing over into warmth, into light remains for the caterpillar something spiritual. It is a spiritual activity that the whole action of the sun works upon the caterpillar. It follows each ray of the sun. Caterpillar, by day, it accompanies the rays of the sun, just as the moth throws itself at once into the flame, giving over its whole moth substance to the light. So the caterpillar weaves its caterpillar substance slowly into the light, pauses at night, weaves by day, and spin and weaves around itself the whole cocoon. In the threads of the cocoon, and we have in the cocoon, in the threads of the cocoon, what the caterpillar weaves out of its own substance as it spins in the flooding sunlight. And now the caterpillar, which has become a chrysalis, has woven around itself out of its own substance the ray of the sun, which it has incorporated in itself. The moth is consumed quickly in the physical fire. The caterpillar, sacrificing itself, casts itself into the sunlight and from moment to moment weaves around itself the threads of the sun's rays. So it's repetitive there. I'm just trying to get to the. So basically, in my study of that, I was just recognizing what you said, and the butterfly being that spiritual light, and the moth being drawn to this artificial light, which is the materialism. And so the butterfly with this, there is the butterfly with it going through the process, it actually it has these beautiful colors. And so when you were speaking of that, that just came to mind. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
No, I don't, I am just thinking of destruction and the kind of destruction that, for example, has totally destroyed Gaza and killed families and chopped off children's legs and burned them in Sudan, where perhaps mothers are forced to see their daughters gang raped. I mean, what do we do with that kind of destruction? Is that destruction, or is that another kind of something?
That's a tough one.
Mm.
I am reminded of a statement, I believe it's in Discipleship 2, where the Tibetan gives certain keynotes for each of the rays. And the one for the first ray is, I think if I remember it correctly, I see the world around me destroyed, and still I stand. Something like that. And so when we see all of that destruction going on, and we have compassion for the victims of that, what do we do with that? And I don't have a good answer for that.
for me, it's going back to our role as the new group of world server. So as I mentioned before, there's so many painful injustice, destruction out there. As a new group of world server, the first thing that we need to do is, like what I said, is like do the pause instead of reacting right away. Because when we react, like showing our anger, hatred, rumination, start to even think about our superiority. I have a better ethics than you killing people. So those kind of reaction is another distortion that we kept from our involutionary form. So when that happen, do the pause, and then let it reflect. And then again, most of the time, those injustices, there's always that story behind it. The same thing with like, I'm just taking an analogy of Judas. When Judas handing in Jesus to the Roman soldiers.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other disciple at the time cursing him. Like, how could you hand it in somebody that loved us so much, and then now you did it that way? It's such a horrible act what you do. But then if we reflect back as a new group of world server, we pause and then let it settle a little bit. After a couple of days, you will realize that without Jesus, there is no resurrection story. So things are unfolded as it's planned. And then the role of us as a new group of world server is not reacting immediately, that putting more woods in the fire, but then reflect back, stay a bit, be a better participant on the event. And this not only bringing peace within you, but then also for the greater humanity, because you are really showing an example of how you react in such a horrible things. Yeah.
Here's a challenge for you. Suppose that Judas was given that mission by his master, and it so overwhelmed him that he had done it that he committed suicide. So he was perhaps fulfilling the will of the Christ at that time, because, as you said, no betrayal, no crucifixion, no resurrection.
I'd like to add something, if I may. I think this is a very difficult question indeed, with the example that you gave us, the destruction. I'm here, I'm speaking here.
Yeah.
The destruction in Gaza. But my little contribution to this reflection is that the good people of Gaza is not what is being destroyed, it's the system that is destroying them that is being destroyed by the light. I don't know if that makes sense to anybody else, but when I look at that, what I look at is that system that is destroying them, that is what being destroyed by the light, not them.
I have a response to something that you mentioned, Christine, that's very non-esoteric and I hope practical. Let's a little shift gears here. You mentioned the evening review. I have found that if I wanted to actualize what DK has encouraged about becoming the observer, with a capital O, and what the Master Moria in the Agni Yoga books encouraged us to do is to practice constant vigilance, then I can't wait until evening to do the evening review. I have to work on that all day long. least aspects of it.
Thank you.
Sorry, I also just wanted to tone it down a bit.
Sorry, we have to bring that to a close now.
Thank you, Mike.
We have to bring the session to a close. It's one of those you need to think about and then come back to. It was a wonderful discussion. Thanks to our three speakers. Nick, I'm sorry if we left you hanging in the air there sometime. But it was very much appreciated, everything you said. Thank you for joining us.
No worries. I was listening and learning.
Good. All right. So we're going to come back now at 22:04.
It is 35.
Sorry?
3:35.
Okay.
And just during the break that we're going to have now, just wanted to announce that if you'd like to form a triangle or another triangle, please meet over in the corner there. We need more triangles.
So I just like to give a flag.
Can you hear me okay? Thank you. Sorry. Thank you for being here to work together during these days of distribution of the energies of Wesak. This great Eastern festival of the Buddha carries with it the note of his teaching on the way of release from suffering through the transmutation of desire. This dovetails with the theme for this section of our conference, which is discipleship and the dissipation of glamour. As you know, the Buddha and his arhat struck a major blow at world glamour, and we are already entering a period which will bring about a much greater blow, carried forward under the jurisdiction of the Christ and a much wider field of arhats, initiates, and disciples. As you know, Wesak occurs under the overshadowing energies of Taurus, that great sign of discipleship, symbolized by the bull of God, that fighting creature that rushes forth on a straight line with its one eye fixed upon the goal in beaming light. This sign is a symbol in the heavens of alignment through Taurus with our tiny, non-sacred planet here. Taurus qualifies as well the new group of world servers. So in a certain sense, in essence, we're all Taurian. At Wesak, the alignment that is established extends outside our planetary life altogether to distant sources. And along the created beam, light and illumination are released powerfully into the world. For Taurus is preeminently a sign of light, and we in turn are light bearers. And it is through light, the light of illumination, that glamour is dissipated. Our task, therefore, is to let in this light, to invoke and evoke it. And it's through events such as these, gatherings of groups of people who have consciously prepared themselves to work together with the available energies, that we provide an inlet, a collective channel, and a consequent sensitive auric field upon which the higher impressions can play. And when such events take place in key planetary centers, at the high points of the spiritual year, the opportunity for powerful work becomes magnified, both vertically and horizontally, and the plan of love and light is forwarded. Our consideration of the dissipation of glamour comes at a time when the fogs and mists clouding life in the three worlds are particularly dense, challenging us all to see clearly what's going on. Such conditions always rise, we're told, at the ending of an age, when there is a clashing of forces between that which is coming in and that which is outgoing. So we each have to play our part in aiding the forces of light to clarify the field, for ultimately, as we know, all outer change comes about through changes within consciousness. All the tools used by the forces of materialism to distort and manipulate humanity towards their purposes have to find their higher correspondence by those aligned with the forces of light. We have the advantage because these tools used by the forces of light establish relationships that extend beyond the realm of the concrete mind and become possible through the bridge of light, which links with the higher levels of mind. And if we look at the great turning points in history, in the history of humanity, when suddenly the tide turns as if miraculously, towards the light, towards victory. These moments are not random, not strokes of luck made possible by a sudden change in the weather, but rather demonstrations of the will of God working, taking the reins, and becoming the directing general. The situation in the world today could be compared to the stage of a woman's labor, the stage of transition. And I know Steve was talking about that in the webinar the other day. This is the time of the most intense pain, when the birth pangs come on fast and furious. During this stage, the consciousness shifts, and through the use of the breath as a means of centering, a woman becomes able to rise above the pain by achieving a heightened point of focus. As we pass through this transition period on the global stage, we are asked as well to rise above the outer turmoil, to become clear and focused, knowing that a process far greater than ourselves is playing itself out in birthing a new world. Ironically, one of the encouraging things about this time is the growing disillusionment on the part of humanity everywhere. This is a stage in the soul's journey. Disillusionment eventually enables people to see more clearly as they begin to step back and question the narratives, and to judge things and make decisions for themselves rather than through someone else's lens. At an earlier time, another major turning point in the history of this country, in a speech before Congress, Abraham Lincoln asked the people of his day to become disenthralled, to free themselves from shackles, bondage, and deeply held beliefs. From one angle, he was relating this demand to the ravages of slavery, but on another, he was calling for a more subjective, spiritual goal, to disenthrall themselves from life in the three worlds, from the things which captivate, fascinate, charm, and ultimately disempower us as the result of preoccupations with that which is unreal, non-essential from the perspective of the true self. Lincoln went on to say that if we could disenthrall ourselves as a nation, we could solve our problems. He said the dogmas of the past, of the quiet past, are inadequate to the stormy present. It was a plea for overcoming our conditioning, our apathy, and asking for a rethinking of how to creatively solve the massive existential challenges standing before the nation at a crisis point. Over the centuries, the glamour of enthrallment has only magnified since that time. Hence the thickness of the glamour in which our world finds itself today, an attack which is taking place upon the astral plane. But as a result of this, many people are disenthralling themselves. Using Plato's cave analogy, they're daring to leave that dark, chained lower kingdom, illusory, and they're braving the light above and learning to handle its radiance. People are tired with things as they are, and as a result, they're searching for openings, not only within a national life, but openings which work out on a much larger global scale, and becoming receptive to that which lies beyond the veils of this world. Members of the new group of world servers have left this stage of disillusionment behind, or at least we hope so. They hold the vision. That's one of their key qualities. And those within the heart center of the group life have a clear understanding of what is transpiring beneath the surface of the outer chaos and what needs to be done to aid the forces of light. As a result, we step back from too much preoccupation with the maelstrom of information and observe events from the soul's perspective, the divine observer that stands detached and follows the middle way. Working at the dissipation of glamour cannot be accomplished if we have our own agendas that we wish to see implemented. It's the soul's agenda that must prevail. In the book Glamour, A World Problem, it said that in order to successfully play our part in the dissipation of group or planetary glamour, we must couple our work with the dissipation of our own individual glamours. For only through this means do we free ourselves to become of service on a wider playing field. The glamours to which the disciple is subject are largely related to the shortcomings or weaknesses of the personality ray, and these must be studied, known, determined, and transmuted, and the strengths of the soul qualities brought into play. An aid in this process of dissipating our glamours, we can look to the Tibetan's translation of Sutra 33 in Book 2 of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. The Tibetan's translation reads, "When thoughts which are contrary to yoga are present, there should be the cultivation of their opposite." But as the Tibetan said, Sanskrit is a very complex language, and so that one translation of that sutra can't fulfill the true meaning. So he cited the translation by Robert Johnston, which provided another dimension. His translation said, "When transgressions hinder, the weight of the imagination should be thrown upon the opposite side." So through this use of the creative imagination, truth, we're told, can be ascertained. In Alice Bailey's commentary on this sutra, In the Light of the Soul, she wrote that these two steps of visualizing and imagining lead to the creation of those thought forms that can become manifest in the physical plane life. And this generates energy, and this energy vitalizes the etheric body. And when this same process is carried out collectively, the group becomes the vehicle for the etheric vitalization of the planet. Hence our work in triangles. Working effectively with the dissipation of glamour, either individually or as a group, has two primary results. The first and obvious result is the satisfaction of seeing the gradual dissipation of the glamour. This liberates the person, the group, and the world for a fuller expression of the soul. The second result is not so clear-cut. The Tibetan says that it is the seeing of the real. Through the dissipation of glamour, we see the real. And he says, he describes this as a terrifying experience, brother of mine. Light reveals, and at each turn of the spiral of the path, we're confronted as an individual and as a collective with ourselves, with the solar self as the dweller and the angel meet. And surely this is a terrifying experience, as the veils which have for so long shielded the personality from itself are rent, and the individual stands face to face with the light which the angel reveals, and truth stands liberated. It's said that the masters of the wisdom must undergo substantial training in order to prepare their vehicles to withstand the aura of humanity. And if we reverse that, we might too need training in order to withstand the intensity of the light, which is emanating and will be emanating more fully from this august group as they more fully externalize. As the soul takes the lead individually and collectively, it can dispel the terrors that might ensue upon the path. This is our central theme in the effective dissipation of glamour, working as soul-infused personalities and groups, drawing upon the united strength this union demonstrates. This is our vital and essential means of service, using the tools at our disposal. No matter what we can do with the opportunities that exist in our daily lives, and we all have them, here is one essential form of service for the soul-infused personality. So to align ourselves with the available energies within ourselves, our group, and with the planet, and channel those energies. So to transform life in the light of those energies, so that they can radiate and stimulate the soul center in the three worlds of human evolution: mental, emotional, and physical. So, thank you. Thank you, comrades. So now we're going to have a very brief visualization, hopefully, on the dissipation of world glamour. This is not the technique given, the primary technique given in the book, Glamour, a World Problem. This is another aspect of it that's taken from that book, from some of the Tibetans' writings. So let's just work together here. So we take a moment for alignment and group fusion with the soul. We can imaginatively look at a fusion of the soul and personality rays. And now we'll link consciously with our group brothers and sisters, thinking outwardly in love towards one another. And here we can work with the people in this room, the people online, the Arcane School, or members of a service goodwill group that we might be participating with. Think outwardly in love. And through this means, we become a point of light, fusing and blending together to make a radiant sun with rays of light going out towards the four corners of the earth. And now we'll visualize an ancient writing which states, the Tibetan stands, the disciple stands, and with his back to the glamorous fog, looks towards the east, from whence the light must stream. Within his heart, he gathers all the light available from that point of power. Between the shoulder blades, the light streams forth. So imaginatively stand with your back to the world glamour, with the eye of the mind focused on the soul, whose nature is love. interlude, and stabilization. Pause for a few minutes to stabilize yourself for the work, and definitely and consciously focus the light available from all sources within the heart center. Imagine that center between the shoulder blades as a radiant sun, which corresponds to the heart of the sun. This sun is directed by the central spiritual sun, localized in the head. Visualize the dual synthetic activity of heart and head. Dissipation of glamour. See a shaft of pure white light, broad and brilliant, pouring out of the heart center between the shoulder blades onto the fogs and mists of the astral plane. While we're doing this, see your particular shaft of light blended with all the other shafts of light through which your group brothers are projecting. Holding the consciousness steady, visualize this great flood of directed light coming from the group, pouring out and dissipating the fog. Hold this point of focused intention. Distribution. As a group, link our group with the other groups working along similar lines throughout the world. And together we sound the following mantra. Let the forces of light bring illumination to mankind. Let the spirit of peace be spread abroad. May men of goodwill everywhere meet in a spirit of cooperation. Let power attend the efforts of the great ones. So let it be, and help us to do our part. So now we're going to break up again into small groups. Have to find what our theme. Do we have a slide for that? Oh, there it is. Okay. I don't seem to have it in my packet. Oh, thank you. So we're going to be discussing this theme of discipleship and the dissipation of glamour. So I'll just read this out. The forces of materialism are today concentrated, as we're told, on the astral plane, where glamour operates like a dense and blinding fog, obscuring humanity's ability to see clearly and to choose the right. As humanity passes through a type of dark night of the soul experience, what role can the new group of world servers play in lighting the way and dissipating this fog? And there's a subset, a couple of questions. How do we navigate this ending of an age when all things are seen through a glass darkly? How do we transition from an age of idealism into the oft-times stark realism which the seventh ray and Aquarius are ushering in? A time when all things are being shouted from the rooftops. So I think that's really a key question, that's that last one. How do we shift from an age of idealism without maintaining our idealism into the oft-times stark realism of the seventh ray Aquarian age? So, okay, break up into small groups, little groups. Huh? I don't, 4?
We're
maybe?
doing groups of 10 with the just
3 groups of 10? Okay.
yeah.
3 groups of 10.
And
Excuse me. Oh, yeah, sorry.
so just to say to the people that are online, did you want to say,
Yeah.
Kathy? Do you want me to say it?
You go ahead.
Just to say for those of you who are online, we'll move you into breakout rooms. And you should have in the chat the 2 discussion questions. Well, 1 discussion question. We have it in Spanish and English. So if you could go ahead and download that, because once you go into the rooms, you won't be able to access it. Yeah. Okay. So great. So we'll just give you maybe 30 more seconds to download that, and then we'll send you into your rooms and you all can get started. So we will come back at and go into our breaks at around 4:20. Okay. Thank you. 4:45, 4:50 for our final session. Just a quick brief announcement. Is publishing company has books for sale. We have a promo right now in Treatise of the Seven Rays. The promo is 20% off any of the individual volumes, or the set, of course, 20% off you could do. And the promo is you also get a free audiobook if you buy. So could purchase that. And it's the same for paperback and for hardcover. So we have both. 2026 calendar is also half off. And we have a book for sale from student Wayne Sturba. I can't remember the title right now, but you can go check it out. We also have a book from Curtis Hoffman on musical tarot. Thank you all. See you back here at 4:48-ish.
Had a breakout room discussion with Florida.
I'm gonna get this whole carpet in the washer today, so just expect that it's something, if you walk out and see a bunch of concrete, that's why. No, 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 I will leave you out, I will go leave you, it breaks my heart, but at the same time. Oh, they're, you know, they're too sweet for it. Stop it. Maybe it's barn. That a what?
Are you giving in the heat? Is that your problem?
All right, everybody, let's go ahead and head back into the room, please, and take your seats. We have the final session of today's conference is ready to begin. All right, welcome back, everybody. Let's go ahead and take our seats, please, and we'll get started. Yeah. Are we good to go on the Zoom, Bobby? We're good to go. Okay, great. So welcome back, everybody. This is the final sort of segment of our Saturday session of today's conference. It's been a really wonderful day. I hope you all would agree. We've had two really great sessions. The first on the fires of the group life. We had a wonderful panel, some audience interaction, and then this last session on discipleship and the dissipation of glamour, a beautiful meditation, followed by those small group discussions. I went around to a few of them. They were very, very deep, very interesting, a lot of thoughts I sort of wouldn't expect to come up. And of course, I think we're all just scratching the surface. And so I see even after the break started, I think a few of the sessions just now ended, actually. So it's sorry to interrupt you. And I'm sure on Zoom we had, of course, wonderful experiences as well. And we'll be sure to follow up with some of you to hear how those went after the conference. So we have now this final session, as I said. The title of this segment is called Esoteric Training, the Living Science of the Soul. We have two wonderful speakers, have prepared great talks for us. After that, we will move into a panel similar to the one we had in this first session. If there's an opportunity, maybe bringing in audience discussion as well. So if there anything does occur to you, feel free to, bookmark it, and we may have an opportunity to bring you in. So our first speaker, Stephen Zagudis, is going to be speaking on heart, the fifth principle, and the living germ.
Okay. So again, we're going to talk about heart, the fifth principle, and the living germ. As we enter this session on esoteric training, the living science of the soul, it's important to recognize what is meant by a living science. This is not theoretical knowledge or accumulation of spiritual ideas. It's a practical discipline of consciousness, an applied process of transformation. It concerns the refinement of the human instrument, the alignment of the personality with the soul, so it becomes part of the training ground. In this sense, we're not just participants in a discussion, but we're co-workers in a shared experiment. The Tibetan reminds us that true esoteric work is group work. It unfolds within a field of shared intention, where each of us contributes to the collective efforts to think clearly, love more inclusively, and serve more effectively. The science is dynamic. It evolves through attention, discipline, and application. Okay. Within this framework, our subject, heart, the fifth principle, and the living germ, is not an abstract philosophy. It's a practical key. It points to the mechanism by which consciousness is refined, the bridge through which the soul impresses the mind, and the role of the heart in ensuring that this process serves the greater good. There comes a turning point in every life of the true students where reliance on external authority begins to recede. Public opinion, long acceptable as the guide, loses its hold. In its place emerges something more quieter, but more certain, an inner recognition of right. Public opinion must give way to individual consciousness of right. This transition is not easy. It requires courage because it asks us to stand inwardly alone. It requires discrimination because not every inner voice reflects the truth. and it requires discipline because the full pull of conformity is so strong. Yet without this shift, the mind it remains conditioned by the collective thought forms and cannot serve the instrument of the soul. It becomes trapped in its own thoughts. When this inner recognition awakens, it's often quite fragile, like a seed of a newly planted plant. It can be overshadowed by doubt, drowned out by the currents of mass thinking. Right? The Tibetan describes this as a living germ. This is not merely symbolic language. Right? It is a precise description of a dynamic principle within us, the principle for growth, the higher potential, the fifth principle, the mind. Right? To understand this, we must understand the role of the fifth principle. In esoteric psychology, the true spiritual man is composed of energies of all seven principles. The fifth principle, mind, occupies a central position. Right? It stands between the lower nature and the higher triad. It is the bridge. It is where the human and the divine meet. We conquer this bridge, or we access it during our meditations. Quite often you get the insight between this bridging between us and the higher mind. But bridging this role is not automatic. In its lower expression, the mind is separative. It divides, it analyzes, it uses logic. It's concerned with form, detail, and distinction. This function is necessary, but it's incomplete. When confined to this level, the mind reinforces fragmentation and isolation. We are separatists. Transformation begins when the mind is lifted into its higher function. This is the domain of the Madhusupta, the son of mind, the divine aspect of the mind within the individual. Right? Here the mind becomes illumined by the soul. It aligns with purpose. It reflects the greater intelligence. At this stage, the relationship between mind and love becomes essential. Love is not a sentiment. It is a cosmic principle. The forces of cohesion that hold things together in all right relationships are bound by love. It is inclusive and it's unifying. When the mind is permeated by higher love, it changes fundamentally. It becomes a vehicle of synthesis rather than one of division. This is where the heart assumes its deeper significance. Esoterically, the heart is not emotion. It is a center of life through which energies of the highest love can flow. The heart encapsulates the idea of freedom from emotion, from reaction, through impersonality and spiritual poise. When the eye of the soul is awakened, it is also an organ of inclusive awareness. When the heart and higher mind are aligned, thinking itself is transformed. Right? Thought becomes an act of service. Perception becomes participation in a much larger reality. Without the heart, the mind becomes brilliant yet detached. At a decisive level stage along the path, what appears as coldness is in fact a desirable quality of the heart, an impersonality that frees consciousness from glamour, sentiment, and personal reaction. Without the mind, the heart may be warm, yet misdirected. Their integration is essential, for only through the union of the clear mind and the illumined heart can the living germ of consciousness steadily grow and mature. It is a function of development. This germ must be employed and concentrated until it is seen in its true proportion. This is a statement of method. Right? Development of the higher mind requires active engagement. We must apply this inner sense of right consistently in thought, in decision, and in action. Each time we choose clarity over reaction, we strengthen the germ. Each time we align with truth rather than convenience, we nourish it. Each time we widen our perspectives through the heart, we accelerate its growth. Okay. Gradually, the germ expands. What begins as a fragile awareness becomes stable, luminous, and inclusive. The mind reflects the higher intelligence. Insight replaces speculation. Understanding replaces opinion. There is a growing alignment with something that's greater than the personal self. This is the true aspect of thought. At a certain point, we recognize that this expanded consciousness is not self-generated. It arises through alignment with the universal mind, the underlying field of all intelligence. The individual mind becomes a point of contact within the greater reality. The mind is a thread leading back to the universal mind. It's the pathway of return from levitation to universality. When this realization comes reality, with this realization comes responsibility. Thought is no longer private. It contributes to the collective field. Clear, heart-centered thought strengthens truth in the world, where confused, separative thought reinforces illusion. This is why cultivation of the higher mind is essential. It is not abstract, it is practical. As individuals develop this capacity, the collective consciousness of humanity begins to shift. Public opinion yields no principle. Reaction gives way to understanding. The divine flower of the mind is not merely an individual achievement. It is part of a larger emergence, a humanity capable of expressing soul collectively. The heart ensures that this emergence is guided by love. It anchors the mind in relationships that remind us that knowledge exists for service. As we continue, a subtle shift occurs. The effort to think rightly becomes less strained. Alignment becomes more natural. The boundary between inner and outer reality begins to dissolve. We begin to think not as isolated individuals, but as participants in a much larger field. This is the beginning of true group consciousness. It does not erase individuality, it fulfills it. The individual consciousness of right becomes an expression of the universal mind, working through a disciplined and aligned personality. Throughout this process, the heart remains central. It stabilizes, integrates, and offers quiet assurance. It ensures that the mind works completely and serves the whole. There is a consistent emphasis on steadfastness and personality and quiet joy in service. The disciple is not asked for perfection, but for persistence, to hold the mind steady in the light, to return repeatedly to the higher alignment, and to stand at a point of tension between the higher and the lower worlds. This is within the affirmation of disciple, and thus I stand. It's partially what they're saying right here, right? This tension is not strained, it's poised readiness. Right? Through it, the soul's energies can flow into daily life. There are times when the path seems unclear, when the light dims, external pressures mount. In these moments, alignment is tested and proven. By remaining steady and refusing to yield to the fear or glamour, the disciple becomes a point of strength within the whole. Right? The journey of the living germ is not walked alone. It's shared with all who strive into the light. The flowering of one mind becomes illumination for many. The work of a discipleship reveals itself as an act of love, the offering of a refined and uplifted mind in service to humanity. Living germ exists within each of us, the seed of the higher mind and the potential for alignment within the universal. It may appear small, but it is alive. Because it is alive, it can grow, develop, and nurture. Our task is to nurture this, to give it attention, discipline, and love, to trust the inner sense of right, even when we stand apart, to cultivate the mind as a bridge to something greater, to anchor all of this in the heart so the unfolding is guided by love and expressed in service. If we do this, the promise is assured. The germ will expand, the flower will bloom, and the thread of mind will lead us into the living reality of universal mind, where the heart and mind are known as one, and the work of the individual is revealed within the greater whole. This is the path, this is the opportunity, and this is the quiet call each of us has been invited to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. That was marvelous. So positively fundamental in our esoteric work, that fifth principle, the mind, the whole path, the germ. So thank you. Thank you. That was a great foundation for our work. We have now the next talk, Robert Klein. And Robert's joining us from Zoom. So if we go ahead and get him up. All right, you can turn your video on, Robert, and unmute yourself. Excellent, thanks. Rob, wait 1 second. We have the Spanish going on the. Lovely, Dora. Dora, we hear you temporarily on the call here, your lovely voice, but we'll just give one. Oh, Robert, were you potentially listening to the Spanish translation?
No.
No, I don't see how that would matter though either. So that's the AI going again. There's an AI interpreter, I think, going. Robert, could you just say a few lines real quick? We'll make sure the lines clear. Again, like we did
Yes,
earlier.
I'm Rob Klein from Portland, Oregon. Currently sunny for the moment.
Okay. And then Dora, do we have a Dora, the Spanish is fixed? No, we still hear Dora. Yeah. Is she going English to Spanish instead of Spanish to English? Does she need to switch it? Is fixed? Okay, Dora, you could say a few lines. Okay, we don't hear you, so I think it's good. All right, all right, so now we can refocus ourselves again. We just, Stephen just finished an excellent talk, and we're going to continue now into sort of almost a continuation of the same meditation in a way, actually. And so Robert Klein will be speaking about the theme anyways, perfect faith in the radiant way.
Hi, we've gathered together today to affirm and celebrate our connection with each other as students, aspirants, and disciples, and to reaffirm our alignment with hierarchy and our commitment to the unfoldment of the plan. We acknowledge the group as the one body of expression and continuously endeavor to merge and blend our individual efforts with the greater effort of the group. For each student, this is a very personal and oftentimes lonely endeavor that requires sacrifice of all that hinders, obstructs, and delays. In the beginning, spiritual aspiration is a feature of the personality. It's drawing attention away from the familiar in brief glimpses of what could be. Then eventually, as we gather evidence and gain recognition of that fuller life held secret within ourselves, the poles reverse, and the consecrated personality becomes a feature of our spiritual aspiration. It's been said that faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. As pledged disciples, we are tasked with the development of perfect faith. But what is perfect faith? Perfection in the eye of infinity is an eternal process of unfolding, and perfect faith can be considered as a commitment to the reality of spiritual evolution by participating in its process. The disciple gathers the evidence of things not seen and transmutes the substance of things hoped for into a fiery affirmation of the divine. Perfect faith requires fearlessness, a fearlessness that sends thoughts aloft and directs the fiery action of the heart to burn away all that conceals reality. Perfect faith is not blind. It flows outward from within where perfection already exists, but is yet to be recognized. Perfect faith is motivated by love and demonstrated by a life of discipline, magnanimity, friendliness, and gratitude. As we progress with esoteric training, acquire knowledge, and attain a certain level of skill and action, we also acquire greater responsibility in relation to the group. Our time becomes an asset that both serves both our personal daily life and the spiritual life that we are in the process of creating. Sporadic effort is no longer an option, and our daily thoughts are consistently self-monitored and directed toward the good, the beautiful, and the true. We acknowledge the authority of the soul and seek its input at every turn. Yet even at this level of spiritual attainment, we struggle. The world seems to have other plans for us as we strive to become who we were meant to be. And the potency of thought that we've developed through esoteric training has yet to guide us to perfection. This may be so with many. It's certainly so with me. But the outlines of the plan are reality now, and the guideposts are visible. The preliminary work has been accomplished and the foundations have been laid. Trust in the teaching has brought us to the point of no return. The old form no longer provides what is necessary for the new life to flourish, so now is the time to build the temple. The work of construction is borne by each of us individually, and the structure is built from the details of our lives, gathered from experience and co-measured with the divine. What are the next steps to be taken upon the radiant way? How do we embrace the reality of discipleship and apply the fruits of our spiritual progress to the common good? The common good is truly the object of all our efforts toward our own perfection. This is the challenge of discipleship. The disciple must forge internal union by means of one-pointed concentration, introspective tension, and an honest self-assessment. And at the same time, we must live and breathe love towards all in selfless service. Mastery of the mind brings us to the threshold of the heart. In the heart, the union is completed and the goal attained. Intuition guides thought, and selflessness guides action. True selflessness comes not from the absence of individual consciousness, but from its expansion into the greater self of the group. Group consciousness is the goal of our endeavor as we continue our work in the advanced degrees of the Arcane School curriculum. Our faith in the process has led us to discoveries and recognitions which affirm the correctness of the path we've chosen. We cannot at this point do anything but hold firm in our faith and explore further into the subtle and the fiery worlds. The fiery heart is at the center of group life and the engine of selfless service. It is the magnet that unites all with the one, and also the power that burns away the veil. As we gather together today with perfect faith in the reality of the one life, we are reminded of the power of the group to accomplish what we each alone are incapable of. And this fact should inspire all of us to carry on with that perfect faith to transmute the hope of humanity into a divine reality. The circumstances of each of our lives differs in various degrees with our fellow travelers along this path, and we each must work within the constraints of our environment, utilizing every opportunity to serve, yet seeking only closer relations to the group with no thought of self. Selflessness is a quality most valuable to each of us, a quality that is difficult to attain and even more difficult to maintain as we strive to extricate ourselves from the dominance of a well-developed individual personality. It requires the power of spiritual intention, that overriding sense of responsibility which draws us out of our comfort zone each and every day to fulfill the demands of service. Selflessness moves our center of gravity out of the personality and into the group. We acquire fearlessness because we no longer identify with the world of credits and deficits. Fear can't gain a foothold where there is no personal want or desire. How do we best put into practice the knowledge that faith has driven us to uncover? And how do we best direct the energy of the heart into our daily lives? Toward ourselves, discipline is the mode of operation. We struggle and strive towards enlightenment and perfection. We utilize the tension created in that struggle, just as an archer utilizes the tension of an extended bow to propel the arrow. The obstacles that arise along the path provide us the means to develop the strength to overcome and move forward. Toward our fellow travelers, we apply the method of magnanimity, friendliness, and gratitude. Love for humanity guides our actions, refines our thoughts, and shapes the quality of our speech. We wield kindness, embody harmlessness, and bear light. We reach upward in faith and outward in brotherhood, forming the living cross of discipleship. We lift as we rise. In gratitude, we recognize all that we have is all we need to follow the plan and fulfill the purpose for which we were chosen in this, our present moment in time. We fear nothing, as our faith in the power of hierarchy is firm and active in our hearts and minds. Through magnanimity and friendliness, we kindle the fire in the hearts of others. In self-forgetfulness, we release our personal power to the group and add to the fire that destroys the veil and reveals the Father's face. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you so much. That was such a, like I said, a sort of, in some ways, a continuation of what Stephen brought forward, and it reminds me of that, the sort of basic fact that all esoteric work is really this process of moving into the unknown. And so it has to do very much with the, what it is that can't be seen, and how to the bridging that gap draws forth basically all the living qualities of the soul within the form that we all know as spiritual livingness. Which, transitioning now into our panel discussion, Stephen and Robert. As I said, the theme of this sort of segment of our conference is called Esoteric Training, the Living Science of the Soul. And so we'll proceed now with a sort of discussion along those lines. But I just want to preface that by saying that, we're not sitting up here as experts on esoteric training. And so this isn't like a panel on like the right and wrongs of esoteric training or the formula or the doctrine or anything like that. Besides the fact that esotericism is a science which is totally in its infancy, the Tibetan says everything he gave is not even the ABCs, basically. But in addition to that, we would like to really focus more along the living aspect of what it means as a living science. And so very much focusing on sort of our own experience of the training, and really moving from really a theoretical discipleship, a theoretical esotericism, into an applied esotericism. And the Arcane School training really is fundamentally focused around that necessity. And so I think maybe we could just start there with the basic tension between those two things, which I'm sure all of us who have studied esotericism have encountered. This tension between theoretical knowledge, what we read and what we sort of accept because we can't know or verify, and between, the tension between that and the other side of that, the only true knowledge is that which we've applied and discovered for ourselves. And that's really being the basis of, anything alive, is that which you've really discovered and internalized and known. So I guess the question is, how do you two experience this tension and these challenges in your own experience, either, today or maybe throughout your training in the school, throughout your training in life?
Well, for myself, I've had to deal with working out being pretty introverted and really being comfortable with the intellectual aspects of the work to actually trying to bridge out and find a release, for the, find a mode of service. That's pretty much what my basic problem is. I going out into public is not something that I'm very accustomed to.
And so, Robert, just following up, what qualities would you say you had to bring forth, your soul had to bring forth for that to occur?
Well, definitely knowing that I've accepted responsibility, that's pretty much, overcoming, well, like, essentially being in front of this audience here is, I'll be resting for a couple of days. But just knowing, just accepting the responsibility and knowing that I do have the responsibility of putting the internal work and everything that I've learned into some kind of positive service. And I find writing to be a good outlet as far as myself.
It's interesting. There's another sort of dichotomy here, and that's that service on the discipleship path doesn't really have to be activity in the normal way we think about it. It has to be in form, of course, anchored in form in the world. Doesn't have to be extroverted necessarily. But if the soul calls one to do that, of course, that becomes a factor. Perhaps we could, I think Steve has something, maybe that's another follow-up question we could get to, Steve, after you comment. You shouldn't have to touch it.
So for many years, I have worked with people that have always taught me to walk the talk, right? And it's a few short, simple words, but there's so often you spend time studying, thinking, and then go off and do exactly the opposite. And you start to realize that things just didn't work the way they should because you had to mess something up. When I started studying the heart, I guess about 2 years ago, I lose track of time, there seemed to me to be a paradox because I was always taught that creative thought comes from the mental plane. And the heart was more of an emotional based on my history, thinking about it. And I started working on this paper, and over the years writing about the heart, I realized that when you're trying to create something new and you're trying to go out there and do work in the world, you need to have clear thought. And this is where the strength of the mental plane comes in. But you also have to reframe it in words and actions that people can resonate with. And this is where the filtering things through the heart becomes so key and critical. So I thought when I started working on this paper, it just brought it all together because you really have got the idea that creative thought, new things are being created, do have to originate as fifth dimensional thought forms. And our job is to bring them down to the planet. My mentor used to say, without screwing it up, right? And I realized that that is heavily on thinking. It's also heavily on heart, filtering it through that aspect. What I do is I have to come through and say, okay, I'm learning something. What am I going to do with it? And not like you need to quote the entire Tibetan. You learn things day by day, right? And you just incorporate that what you know. And when you're doing the evening review, you might ask clarity. I didn't quite get that point. What is it? So it's just a process.
There's sometimes a tendency, I think, in this work, I'm not speaking specifically about anybody or anything like that, but sort of my own experience actually, to think of this basic thing. Okay, well, we move from mysticism into occultism or into esotericism or whatever, and that's has to move out of the mystical path and into something else. And that's true from one angle, but in another angle, and the Tibetan actually writes very, very clear on this point in Letters on Occult Meditation, is the two paths actually merge together. And the whole book is basically about the merging of those two paths and what that means. And that basically both are merged within the head. The heart and the head are blended and merged within the head. And there are many hearts, of course, within the human constitution as well. And so that's beautiful, that experience, Stephen. Thank you. I wonder if we want to move on to, and we'll go to if anybody has any comments or questions in just a moment. But I guess one follow-up question, I'm trying to think of how to phrase it exactly, but it's this idea of taking something from potentiality into sort of manifested expression or manifested power. The process of externalizing something subjective. And so I think Tibetan defines spiritual livingness as the sort of objective expression of the subjective, or the objective expression of everything one is internally, or everything that one is or has, or in a sense of being, bringing that forth into the world. And so you've touched on it already, but I wonder if there's anything more you want to say about that in terms of really externalizing that which is internal.
Well, this goes back to the idea of manifesting a thought form on the physical plane and keeping it whole. All right. I was taught that Tesla used to take the car engine in his mind apart time and time and time again, put it back together, take it apart, put it back together, take it apart. I was told that Mozart used to have the entire score in his head, and when he wrote down, there was no drafts. It was the perfect image. So what were they doing? They were taking something, an idea they had, and they were refining it. They were refining it within the mind. And we get insight from just listening. Ideas come out of nowhere, but if you just do like a tester does, take it apart, look at it, right? All of a sudden you start to realize that what you're doing. And then if you can expand to what value is this to humanity, now you start putting energy into it. So this whole process of creation, when done probably most efficiently, is done in the mind, right?
Thank you. Rob, do you have anything?
Yeah, one thing that I might bring up in terms of, subjective and objective, just a line I had read last night in Discipleship in the New Age, instructions from the disciple, or the Tibetan to a disciple, about thinking as an introvert, but being an extrovert in the sense of the heart. And the heart is really part of you can couple the heart with the intuition, the higher imagination. And I can imagine someone like Tesla or Mozart utilizing that form of imagination, that higher imagination, to actually bring it into form. Whereas, utilizing the mind to, finalize it.
Thank you, Rob. I'm thinking also of the statement Kathy just made actually in our last session. She was quoting the Tibetan, but about imagination being a means of discerning truth from falsehood, which is a very curious statement that I thought about over the years. But, perhaps it has something to do with, a true understanding of where we're working from, what materials we're building with, what will is behind the use of the imagination in that way, and what's really coming through at every phase of the building process. when we actually construct something that can actually be a revelatory agent, that's sort of a human possibility, really a soul possibility, but it's kind of extraordinary. In a creative capacity to think of that that a human creation can be a real beacon of truth, like what that really means.
Just one more comment on something Rob just said. Concept of context is important. Tesla obviously understood mechanical engineering, right? Mozart obviously understood music and notes. I know neither, right? The work that we do, that I work on, is primarily around computers and finance and accounting. And you basically take that which you know and put it through the process. It's not like, oh, I can't do this because I don't know mechanical engineering. We all have skills, and the Tibetan and just good practice teaches us to use what we have and then let the power of intuition expand it one step at a time. So just something Robin made me think about it. Context is so important, and it's different for many of us. There's no good or wrong. It's just different.
Thank you. If we have, by the way, is everybody too warm? Maybe we could check the air conditioning on, and we could also go to some questions as well, or comments from the audience for just a little bit. If somebody wants to grab, Yadelsi is also doing the AC and running the mic, so give her just 1 second, and she'll bring you. I think Steve had something to say in the front, and then we had a few others here as well. And we don't have too long, but we have time for several. Yeah.
Thanks. I just wanted to, I love that thought of practical, and that all of us have our own language, our own, we call it a field of service. It's nothing to do with, in my understanding, with introvert or extrovert. It's through our life, particularly, when some of us are getting on in years, through our profession, or maybe through music, maybe through an art form, we've built a body of knowledge and understanding. And then there's this phrase where the Tibetan says, take the knowledge which is yours. So in all your encounter with the teachings, all of your studies, find those few little gems that you actually know, and then adjust its application to the world's need, which can sound almost like an idealistic thing. Instead of take all your accumulated experience, your profession, your field of art, and creatively seek to apply the essence of that which you know through that experience. And for me, all of us, that's what, in a way, that's what the heart is doing. The life thread is anchored in the heart. And the mind, through the way we've trained our minds, we experience the heart as both our own heart and universal, a universal heartbeat. So a simple act of taking something you know and applying it, which may be through writing, it may be through our work in the school, it doesn't matter, but just constantly be applying it.
Thank you, Steve. Maybe we'll go to, I just forgot your name. Malcolm, sorry. Yeah, Malcolm. And then maybe Curtis after that. And if we have any hands online as well, maybe we can go to one of those.
Esoteric. And there's little mentioned of the ego, of I. Well, can you elaborate on that?
Sure. Either of you like to take that? Stephen or Rob?
Not sure I understood the question.
Yeah. So I'm thinking of Michael Jackson, who tragically passed away. And he was an artist. He projected himself in a certain way. and it goes back to the previous seminar on glamourism to an extent. If we deal with esoteric science and we know ourselves and we build ourselves up and we develop this temple and we perform on a certain level, are artists per se, artist wise. How do you differentiate between the ego and who the individual is?
So when we look at the works of the Tibetan, there's a clear distinction between the personality and the soul. Okay. And this is the building of the Antakarana, the building of that thread where the personality is meant to act as a vehicle of the soul. And the tighter the linkage, the tighter the understanding, the more precise the actions of the personality can be. Right? I've often in meditation had the thoughts of a tandem parachutist, if you know what that is. Somebody jumps off an airplane, that's a new person, and they're strapped to a teacher, right? And because the teacher is the one who's going to make sure the person doesn't fall and kill himself. Right? But that's a metaphor in my mind of being an agent of the soul. And the little I, the personality, really is just part of that bigger process, right?
Rob, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I just strictly in terms of groups and music, as a musician working in a group, I can say that when a group of musicians is really working together and communicating, there is this sense of a loss of your individual, yourself as an individual, and you really become part of the music that's being played. It's I think this is what every musician strives for when they play music in a group, is to reach that point where the music becomes the most important part of your individual process. It's true group work, and I think that it might be in terms of losing the personality and really working within the concept of the soul when you're working in that formation.
Thank you both. Curtis, I think Cardi has the mic.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and thank you, Bob, for bringing up the quote from St. Paul about faith being the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. In terms of working from what you know, sometimes it will happen that you will get a call into a zone where you don't know. And the natural response of the personality is, I don't know how to do that. And if you have faith, the response you will get to that statement was, we'll show you. And they do.
Do we have, I'll go to you, Susan, in a second, but let's see if there's anybody online. Are there any hands raised online? We go to one hand online. No, there's not. Okay.
Thank you so much.
I should have gone, if you guys had any comments on what Curtis shared. Do you have, Rob, anything on that? No. Okay. We'll go.
Thank you. Thank you for the talks and everything. And I appreciate what you said, Michael, at the beginning, that, we're not really experts here. We're all experts. We're teachers. We're not teachers. And I was thinking of the importance of going from the intellect into the practical. And I think of that all the time in my work in psychology, but I think of archaeology and sociology and cultural and all of the ologies that exist. And in a way, like this experience is a salon. And I think of the old salons that kept growing around the world. And I feel like I've been seeing more and more of that, and people calling them, we're having a salon and groups getting together and sharing their different wisdoms, knowledge, teaching, whatever it might be. And that feels one aspect that's so practical. That's really, I feel like it's spanning, especially online now, and Substack is a big one. So
Any more questions or comments? Anything online? Any other thoughts, Stephen or Rob? In closing? Yeah. Yeah, we'll have one more from Mensa.
I think the common thread of what I'm hearing through these questions is a function of trust in doing.
Yeah.
And if you have trust in doing and you can somehow evaluate what's being asked of you and make certain that it's a valid task, then as Curtis is saying, the knowledge will be there.
Maybe that's already an answer to my remark. I just want to make a remark. It's not really a question. But you are all so privileged that you all speak English or American. I was thinking, no, when I was thinking when I was listening to your talk, Stephen, a lot is talking about the mind. But if I was really thinking, how the hell would I translate that in French? Because they don't have a word for mind.
I heard that today. I was going to go look it up because I spoke German a long time ago, and I knew the word Kopf, which is head. I was going to look that one up tonight because I was curious. Because you have a translation without the concept of mind.
Yeah. So okay, it was just a remark.
Thank you both so much for your work. Let's give them a round of applause. We'll move now into our final meditation of the evening. Have a period for a few closing thoughts, but I think we've closed. So I think it's time. We'll just go right into our meditation. It's been an excellent day. Thank you all of you here in the room, as well as online, for all of your participation today. It really is a group work. So even though we have, chosen students to come up here and present, it really is the entire school body that is really making the conference. And of course, those of you who are not in the school who are here, you're also part of that work. So thank you all. This meditation is one we normally use at the full moon. We'll use our conference keynote in place of the seed thought. The meditation, very appropriately, is titled Letting in the Light. We begin with group fusion. We affirm the fact of group fusion and integration within the heart center of the new group of world servers, mediating between hierarchy and humanity. We say together, I am one with my group brothers, and all that I have is theirs. May the love which is in my soul pour forth to them. May the strength which is in me lift and aid them. May the thoughts which my soul creates reach and encourage them. alignment. We project a line of lighted energy towards the spiritual hierarchy of the planet, the planetary heart, the great ashram of Sanat Kumara, and towards the Christ at the heart of hierarchy. And we extend the line of light towards Shambhala, the center where the will of God is known. Higher interlude. We hold the contemplative mind open to the extraplanetary energies streaming into Shambhala and radiated through hierarchy. Using the creative imagination, endeavor to see the three planetary centers, Shambhala, hierarchy, and humanity, gradually coming into alignment and interplay. Meditation. We reflect on the seed thought. Let the fires of the group life destroy the veil hiding the Father's face. precipitation. Using the creative imagination, visualize the energies of light, love, and the will to good, pouring throughout the planet and becoming anchored on Earth and prepared physical plane centers through which the plan can manifest. We use the sixfold progression of divine love from Shambhala to hierarchy, the Christ, the new group of world servers, men and women of goodwill everywhere in the world, physical centers of distribution. Lower interlude. We refocus the consciousness as a group within the periphery of the great ashram. We sound together the affirmation. In the center of all love, I stand. From that center, I, the soul, will outward move. From that center, I, the one who serves, will work. May the love of the divine self be shed abroad in my heart, through my group, and throughout the world. We visualize the downpouring spiritual inflow released from Shambhala through the hierarchy and streaming into humanity through the prepared channel. We consider how these inpouring energies are establishing the pathway of light for the coming of the world teacher, the Christ. distribution. As the great invocation is sounded, visualize the outpouring light and love and power from the spiritual hierarchy through the 5 planetary inlets: London, Darjeeling, New York, Geneva, Tokyo, irradiating the consciousness of the whole human race. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center, which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Thank you, everyone, again. Thank you, everyone, again for your participation today. You're all invited, of course, to tomorrow's session of the Arcane School Conference, which is from 2 to 6 p.m. Thank you all and have a good evening. Yeah.